Hey everybody, this is Jake here, and I'm here with Cindy Carrillo, who's going to teach us a little bit about painting, which is something I know nothing at all about. So this will be really great, and hopefully you guys can learn something, and I'll get to learn something too. So Cindy, you want to introduce yourself, and then just kind of jump on into what we're doing?
Okay, sure thing. I'm Cindy Carrillo and been around Redemption for a really long time. And I've been painting since I was a little girl. My mom and dad both paint. And what I'm going to talk about today is watercolors, because I think a lot of you are trapped at home right now, or maybe even working from home, and you might be going a little nuts. And I thought watercolor might be kind of a fun way of something to give it a try, because once you even get back into the regular working world and you start doing vacations, watercolor is something kind of fun that you can take with you and give it a try. And you can do it without spending a lot of money. You could actually do without spending a lot, and that way if you hate it, you can give it away at your next white elephant at Christmas time and say, here you go, and give it to somebody else. That's my suggestion. Is I'm just gonna show you things that you can do on a small level, really small level. So I'm not gonna go crazy with this. It's just a really simple introduction. And then if you go nuts with it, believe me, you can really go crazy, because I have a bag, different levels. Okay, I have a little tiny travel bag, and then I have my backpack where I go out everywhere, and it's got tons of gear. My back hurts carrying it. Then I have my studio where it's like crazy. Every possible brush, everything, brushes from China, wonderful, everything. So you can really go nuts with this, a little overboard. But I'm going to try to simplify so you don't think you're going to go too cuckoo.
Cindy, if someone like me has nothing at all to start,
Yeah.
where would I get any of this stuff, and what would you recommend?
Well, you can really, you are so fortunate when you live in the Valley, because in the Tempe area, my friends are so jealous from around the country, because we have Jerry's Artorama, you have Dick Blick, which is, Jerry's Artorama is on the 60 and rural, Dick Blick is on University and rural, okay, two of the most big mega art supply stores in the country. And people from around the country have to pay for shipping. And you live right here, and they are right in the corner, and they are the best deals ever. So you can go into Jerry's and you can get yourself these wonderful little paint kits. Mine's all dirty and well loved. I cleaned it just for today. Okay. You can get these. There's one smaller than this at Jerry's for $12. Now, it's not the best paint in the world, but it's enough to at least give you a shot. They come with a tiny, cute little adorable brush that's in there, just so you can try it. Okay, just try it. If you go this level, you're spending a little more. But if you wait till they're on sale, which I always wait for a sale, you can get them reasonably, like $25, which is kind of much. So if you want to go for the little box, there's a little box right by the checkout. It's a cute little box, $12, little tiny brush, super adorable. It'll fit in one of these little bags you get from Sprouts, or a Ziploc bag works just the same. All right, I'm all for cheap, on the cheap, okay?
Great.
Awesome. You want it so that you can, the cool thing about watercolor is that you can travel on airplanes, and they're not going to make you throw it out. Like I have to check them because they're going to be like, what's in here? It's liquid. It might be lead. It's not, but they get all freaked out. So I have to check all my oil paints. Watercolors, not a problem. You can bring this with you in the paint, you can paint with it in the plane and everything. So you're looking for little Winsor Newton, great brand, little tiny cute boxes. It's in the watercolor section. Ask for help. The art supply people are wonderful. Don't let them talk you into bigger than this until you try it out. Again, you might hate it. So stay small until you're sure you like it. All right? Perfect. Stay with the tiny brush. As you get where you start falling in love with it, you might go bigger. You want a little pack of cheap Kleenexes, little packet, or just grab some from home and throw it in there. But this is kind of nice to have in there. Water bottle, if you have those little teeny tiny ones, even better. But if you're traveling, use your water bottle and just reuse it. write with a marker, yuck, like a face on it or something, okay, because you will drink out of it. And I drink out of it. I have many times, and so far I'm still here. So, and if you use paints from China, there's lead in it. So don't drink out of your bottle, but
Don't drink the lead paint.
And so this is the cool thing about using watercolors when you travel, because you don't have to be carrying turpentine or weird cleansers, things like that. And then get yourself a little spiral paint pad. Both art stores have these. You want spiral because they turn around. All right, easy peasy, easy to use, but you want watercolor paper, not cheapy, thin paper. You will be so mad and so frustrated, and you will quit the first day. Now, this is the cheaper ones, but you can go a better quality, and I think it's worth it. I always show you the cheap because you don't want to spend money and be mad you spent all the money, and then your spouse is mad you spend a bunch of money on a hobby that you quit right away. So I suggest cheap, but if you think you might like this or you already sketch a little bit, go the step up and get something with a bit of a binder, and then when you travel, you take it with you. And I keep these with me and date them, and they're so fun. We did a cruise when the kids were little, and I sat in airports. I sketch in the airports, funny people sitting, there's the back of their heads. I mean, it's so fun, and I did the kids. I did a go dancer at the dinner. People sitting at the coffee shops. And you know, nobody knows, nobody looks at you. In fact, the minute they start looking, people turn away right away because they just think you're odd. Nobody pays attention to you. Don't hesitate. So I think getting a little book like this that you can start. You can just take with you. In your pad, you're also keeping a mechanical pencil because you want a nice point, and a mechanical pencil, you don't have to take a sharpener because you'll forget your sharpener and you'll lose it. You'll set it down on the table, you get up to leave, and then it's gone. Mechanical pencil, not a problem. And their erasers are pretty good. That way, as you go out, you have a pencil. You can do a light, quick little sketch. Doesn't matter, you can't draw. What you realize is that when you go out in public, no one can draw. Nobody can draw. They're already amazed you're drawing. And people can say, my aunt draws. My sister's an artist. They never say, oh, I draw better than you. Nobody care. Don't care. I realize I spent probably 40 years of my life worrying what everybody thought about my work. Who cares? Just do it. And if you just do it and start doing it now, 5 years from now, you're going to be 5 years better. There you go. You just start drawing and then just fill it in. And it doesn't matter if the colors are what they're wearing. You just start filling it in. And
That's
just
really
start
good.
painting. They don't have to be the colors what you see. I'll give you some examples. I paint everywhere I'm at. I use oils or watercolors, depending upon how much time I have. Like I'm in Sedona, or I'm at Crystal Cove, one of my favorite places.
Wow.
At the beach, in the sand, with grandkids, with my mom and dad, who I watch all the time, sitting in doctor's offices. I draw people at the doctor's office to get practice. If I don't have much time, I want to learn my colors. And if I buy new colors, which is like total dream for me, practice putting on a dab of color and then adding water and see what does it do. And that's going to teach you what adding water does. The more water, the lighter the color. The less water, the darker the color. And when you're just sitting, so if you're on not a Zoom meeting wouldn't work because of course they see what you're doing. That just is terrible. I hate Zoom meetings because they all see what you're doing. Like, well, who cares why should they have to see you? But anyway, if you're on a phone call and it's a long call, you can do these. So you take a little dab of your paint. I'll show you my palette. This is my favorite one. This is mine. It's always filthy all the time. It doesn't make any difference. So you take a little blab of your paint. I want to show you. The darker the color means there's less water.
Okay.
Okay. So the more water you add, it will dilute down the lighter the color. Now, it makes sense when you're hearing that, but you're not going to really learn it until you do it.
Sure.
So it doesn't matter how much paper you are wasting. You're not wasting paper. The more you paint, the more you learn. The more you do this with your colors, the more comfortable you're going to get, and you'll get more control.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes tons of sense. So do you put the paint on the paper first? This might be the silliest question. And then you put water on it, or?
Both.
Okay.
Both work. In fact, I'm going to show you right now.
Yeah.
Let me get out. Let me get out. Now, see, of course, I don't own just one brush. That would be silly. Watercolor started in China and in the Asian countries and Japan, and went from there. Of course, they're so ancient, old, to England. And of course, the English, which I have a lot of England in me, they have to make everything with rules. Everything has to be very tight, very strict, very rule oriented. In China, everything is loose, and they do calligraphy, and everything's free flowing. Now, I don't know if this is too far for you to see, but you have the option of wetting your paper or not wetting your paper. So in your journal that you travel with, it's very hard to soak your paper down. So I wet my brush, put it in the paint, and then draw with it. I use it more like a drawing tool. If I'm doing a painting on a big sheet of paper, you can wet your paper really well, let it get wet. Then I'll go into one of my beautiful blues, which I love my palette. Which, if you get into this, boy, contact me. I'll set you up on like the most awesome palettes. Some of my favorite painters. And then you can just fling that blue in there.
Oh, wow.
Watch it. Watch what it does. Now, see, it flows down on its own because the paper is wet. Because the paper is wet. If the paper is dry, on the other hand, and I'll use a different brush, barely any water, barely. And say I go into a paint that's dry, barely give it water. Now, you can't go into watercolor completely dry. You have to add a little bit. But look at the difference.
Oh, wow.
It's much deeper. I don't know whether you can on Zoom, I don't know if you can like get closer to see that, but it's like calligraphy. See the strokes you get, and then it's run out of water. So you get a different look, and this is what you'll need to play with. And if you get into this and you enjoy it enough, I would suggest that you get a Chinese giant, it's called a mop brush, and they're wrapped with wire, big old fat mop brush. Wow. And that's where you get those cool, beautiful washes. And then get one of these. It's a calligraphy brush. It's a Chinese calligraphy brush. And they're squirrel hair or weasel hair, and then they're wrapped. Isn't that neat? Because
that's crazy.
They hold tons of water. So when you go up into here, it holds water, and then you can go in it with another color.
Oh, wow.
And that's where you spend the time, start learning how to mix your colors. So when you add red to blue, you get purple. And that's where you start really learning how to do your color mixing. Not by reading somebody's color chart and this. People spend all this time buying books on color charts. Don't memorize color charts. Do it. Put down blue, throw in red on it, and watch, and your brain will never forget that. Rather than reading, if I mix red and green, I do that. No, do it. Throw the color on there and watch what happens. And that's how you're going to learn what happens when I now throw this deep red. And each blue in your pans of paint is a different blue.
Okay.
So each blue does its own thing. That makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like that's really cool too, and encouraging, because I feel like so much of today's stuff, if you want to learn something, it's watch the right videos, it's write books, whereas that's really encouraging just to slap it onto the paper and just go do it.
Yes, and there are wonderful videos.
Yeah.
I have videos I've been watching from just master watercolors.
Hmm.
They're wonderful, but none of them, they'll say have little tricks. Well, sometimes there are some awesome things that you're frustrated with and you're
Sure.
bad with, and you go, "Oh my gosh, are you kidding? I could have just bought a better brush, and I would have saved myself all this aggravation."
Yeah.
And that's true. There are things that could help you,
Hmm.
but rather than memorizing out of a book, there's no secret to being better painter. You just have to paint. You got
Yeah.
to practice. You just got to practice and do it. And there's nothing like watching that color mix, because it'll go in your head and you'll remember the next time you're out there and you see a gorgeous purple in a flower, you'll remember, oh, I know, I threw that blue on there, I put a touch of red and I watched that purple come. Just
Yeah.
go do it. Now, watercolor, honestly, is the easy part is it goes down, it's easy to clean, it's easy to get color blending.
Hmm.
The hard part is control.
Hmm.
It does what it wants to do. You do not control it. And
Okay.
I personally am not a fan of very, very detailed in the lines watercolor. I go to oils for that.
Hmm.
I think the beauty of watercolor is lost if you're wanting to do tight realism perfectly. I think what's beautiful is the overlapping color. I feel like you lose the beauty of watercolor if you don't use the flow. But
Okay.
that's me. And I mean, I'm a 6 on the Enneagram, and I'm, like, I think that's what watercolor does. But it is hard to control.
Sure.
So be ready to be frustrated. Be ready to go through a lot of paper. Accepting that, take the time. Take the time, let it go, be ready to watch it run. It's going to, as you see, it's going to run.
Wow.
Yeah. But, the colors that you can get are just endless. It's just so much fun. Your palette, leave it messy. It doesn't matter. The colors that go. Let it do what it's going to do. I think that's enjoyable. The thing to keep in mind too, unlike oils, you can't cover mistakes. Like an oil painting, I've had finished oil paintings that have gotten into a show that nobody knows that there was 2 horrible paintings under that final painting. Horrible. And they all got scraped off, painted over the top, because an oil painting, you can paint right on top of another painting or scrape it off. There's no scraping off. Watercolor, when it's on there, and you try to cover it up and you have mud. So when this goes down, when you take your brush and you do a thing of orange, look at that, it's on. There is no going back. There's no going back. There's no taking that off. There's no scraping it off. There's no fixing it. So it is immediate. So that can be a positive, but that can be a negative, but that's what it does. It's like that's the medium. You have to accept the strengths of the medium. I don't call that a weakness. That is the strength. We're the weakness. So you got a problem, it's user error. You better accept that you need more practice.
That's great.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes tons of sense. If for someone like me who really has hard time even imagining like creating something on a piece of paper, much less, what would you recommend starting doing? Just putting paint on paper? Like, what I should try to draw something or paint something I see? Like, how would you get started?
I think I would play with the colors. I'm not kidding. This looks boring, but first I would play with the colors and water.
Okay.
And see the difference between lots of water and little water, so that you have some control over what you can do with a lot of water and little water. What happens how do I get dark and light? Just spend just a little bit of time playing with your brush and see what you can do. And if you can, I really would go with more than what comes with that little set, that dinky little funky brush. I would you don't even have to spend money on a fancy mop brush, like the fancy Chinese brush. Get a moppy brush. Makeup brushes really work pretty well.
Hmm.
Because right now you don't care if the hairs fall out. You're not doing something you're turning in for show.
Yeah.
So even a makeup brush that comes in a kit, even that, just play with it and see.
Sweet.
I would do that first. And then I think I would try something like if you have a bouquet that's left over, or a flower you take a walk and you snatch a flower from a neighbor's yard or something really full of color. I would start with something like that, really glorious. And don't worry about trying to make it perfect. Get over that right off. Go for the color. What is it you see in a glorious looking apple, or a beautiful flower, a hibiscus, a rose, something with real flower? And just think about, if you squint your eyes, what is it you see? What stands out the most? Not every perfect line. Get over that. You're not getting graded. You're not being judged. Again, you got to get over that. This is not an art class that your work's going to get up, put on the wall, and the kids are all teasing you about. This is just what stands out. What is it? What color do you see? And try to maybe get that color. Have the fun of the swirl. What do you see? What is the main thing that stands out? And that right there, you're going to have a great time. And then start thinking in terms of, as you go out with it. If you're going to be out someday when we get to go back out to the coffee shops, maybe start looking at people sitting. And what do you see? Umbrellas? What do you start noticing in color? Umbrellas, the sky, the clouds in the sky when the monsoon comes in. Maybe start trying to do some negative spaces of the blue and leave room for the clouds. You start thinking that way, it doesn't take very long for you to start noticing things to paint. And if you're going to add anything to it, if you start getting into this, add anything, get a Chinese white. And it's a white that's sold with watercolors. All these watercolors are transparent. They're not opaque. Okay? They're transparent. So that means when you paint down, you can do an overlap like stained glass. The overlap of each color will form a new color. So red and a blue will form purple, but they're still transparent. But if you wanted to add a little white to it, you can get Chinese white, and it's in the watercolor section. So if you wanted to add a little white, say for your clouds, and you forgot to leave an area of white, like with the clouds on your paper, you could go in and add a touch of white. But that's one color you could go in and add and still stay with the watercolor.
Okay, great.
Yeah, but that might help you be a little less frustrated with what you're doing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So you can always add more colors. Once you get going on it, you go in that watercolor section, and oh boy, don't buy. I guess I'm telling you the difference between student grade and professional is student grade has more binder. All paint has something to hold it together so it stays in your little pans.
Yeah.
And the more binder, the cheaper the paint. So when you take a wash of color like I just did, it's less bright. Like if you get your kids a pan of paints, well, their colors aren't anywhere near as bright as what I just put down. It's because there's so much binder in it, they're very, very pale. The more money you spend on your paint, the more pigment there is. So you're going to have much more vibrant color. You'll be much more satisfied with your colors. So you're looking at the colors thinking, my gosh, how could that be so expensive? Well, that's going to go a very long way. I can take a little dab of red and it's going to go, wow, it's going to be powerful and it's going to last me a very long time.
Okay.
So if you do get into this, it can be very well worthwhile to then go get a pan of Winsor Newton good quality paint, and it will last you for a very, very long time, and you can start sketching. And if you're interested, I can make some suggestions later. Write me and I can suggest some good sketching books that are non-threatening, very basic, good instructional books. And I posted some watercolor books on my Facebook page. The stack is like this big, but some really good watercolor books.
Okay, great. This has been so cool to see, Cindy. I mean, I came into this wanting to hear from you, but yeah, I'm gonna give it a try. I haven't done this ever in my life, nor did I even think starting this morning that I would even try this. But it just seems I don't know, it seems very easy to get started, just throwing some of the paint onto the paper and seeing how it moves and the colors, which that kind of gets me excited to start like a fun new
Good. It
hobby.
should. I think people feel like they have to, like kids were told, do you have any art, you know, well, who does? Not, I mean, how would you know that? Unless you haven't done it. People don't take art classes unless somebody told them, oh, you're artistic. Well, no, that's ridiculous. Just do it. Just do
Yeah.
it. And you don't know that you are until you have had a chance to give it a go. So I say, give it a go. It's not expensive, and give it away if you didn't like it. So no loss.
That's great. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for taking the
Sure.
time to show everybody. And I'm sure if they want to check out more of your books and resources, they can check you out on Facebook.
Yes.
And yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you again. And for everybody watching, I hope you guys go and give it a shot. I think I'm going to try to run down and grab a pad and give it a shot.
Gary's or Dick Blick. Yeah, they're both happy to help you. Very, very good people in both stores.
Perfect. I know, and I know my wife goes to as well, and I know that you can call them now, even during the quarantine, and they'll bring some things out the door.
Yeah, they'll run it out to your car.
Yeah, so you got options. So
Yeah.
thanks again, Cindy, and for everybody
All right, you're
watching,
welcome.
we hope you have a great rest of the day. Take care.
Be safe, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.